Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships, healing from narcissistic relationships, just understanding them more. So let's talk a little bit about what holding back on empathy, which you might feel like you have to do after you've been through a narcissistic relationship, does to you. It's exhausting to hold back something that's so integral to you, but you might have learned or believe through the narcissistic relationship that empathy is dangerous, so you hold it back. I truly believe that empathy is often the superpower of many survivors, and it's a superpower that can prove dangerous in the narcissistic relationship, can make you vulnerable to getting and staying stuck in one of these relationships, and to difficult emotions such as pity and guilt, as well as trauma bonding. Empathy is good for you. It's good for us, except with the carve-out of the narcissistic relationship. Once you really understand what narcissism is, your own empathy can feel a little challenging to you. And you may find yourself wanting to hold back. And this is uniquely observed in the narcissistic relationship. As the patterns of narcissism register, and you really start transitioning into heavy radical acceptance, you may feel a pull to not empathize as much. However, the empathy is such a natural part of you that holding back on the empathy may feel very difficult. It basically involves holding an authentic part of yourself back, especially when the narcissistic person is pulling for example, pity from you. You may, A, have had it and no longer feel any empathy for them, which raises the sense for some people that you're a bad person for not feeling anything. B, you feel something and you're actively holding back on empathizing because you don't want to get taken advantage of again. This is a tricky mix because in some ways there is something solid there. It represents discernment, but it may go against your nature and feel inauthentic to hold yourself back. C, you may feel something and you behave and show that empathy. You just be you, and in some cases, the narcissistic person takes advantage of it. In some cases, they don't. You may feel radically accepted, untrauma bonded, and well in hand of the situation, that you can do this empathy showing. Obviously, if you've gotten to level C, you are doing very well. This is not possible in all relationships. In some narcissistic relationships, they lose steam and don't care about you anymore. So this is more doable. But in other in those circumstances, it's more doable. But in other more significant relationships, this can be a tough line to toe, especially if they continue to bait you and make cruel jabs and snipes. But some people just radically accept it, see it clearly, be in therapy, have support, and can do C, show up with empathy. C is definitely, though, a balancing act. But no matter what, holding back on your true nature, which obviously you've been doing for a long time in these relationships, but holding back on your true nature, especially as it relates to warmer and affiliative emotions such as compassion and empathy, can feel counterproductive and it can feel exhausting. Again, one of the biggest critiques I hear of approaches that people have to take in order to stay close to the narcissistic person is that they feel inauthentic, that holding back on the warmth and having more of a disengaged gray rock response is also not good for you. That there is a cost associated with holding back on your empathy, or any time we can't behave in line with our authentic emotions, especially if it is consistent. There is a cost on holding back who we are. The belief that empathy in these relationships is dangerous is not that too far off base. Maybe dangerous is not the right word, and instead, it is about being unstrategic, or it does set you up for being taken advantage of. You bring empathy, and they do what works for them. You bring empathy, they still lie to you. You bring empathy, and they feel entitled to it, but they don't show it back. You bring empathy, and they betray you. That's enough to squeeze all of the empathy out of any of us. But that's not how empathy works. It replenishes. But if you stay in a narcissistic relationship and don't have access to other supports, it can get depleted. And it's not that you lose it, but you feel exhausted around other people and may feel as though you can't be present with others, especially in a deeper and more connected way. And when something happens to us, there is the danger of it being generalized, and we hold back on perhaps being the open and somewhat trusting and reciprocal people we were. And then we feel bad about that. Here's the deal. I have met folks who have said, this whole narcissism thing hasn't happened to me. And of course, my first hypothesis is if they were saying that, maybe they were the narcissistic one. In some cases, it was true. In some cases, these were people who were really lucky and it hadn't actually happened to them. People with small social circles, nice family of origin, nice spouse, luck, right? But for the vast majority of us, we are going to run into it. And it will pull for our empathy if our empathy works. And we will get hurt. And then we will learn, and we will learn that there are people who will take advantage of us when we show empathy. And we will radically accept, and we will calibrate, and yes, we will have to learn different ways of showing up in our different relationships. And that is not inauthentic. That is wise. That is discernment. And yes, you will be judged if you don't summon up the pity for the narcissistic person's victimhood and their sad sack story. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable in you when you don't respond with your usual empathy responses, like fixing it or reassuring them. We are changed by narcissistic relationships. And you know what? Maybe it's not all bad. A primary goal when we heal is that we give ourselves permission to feel safe in relationships, that we acknowledge our true nature and know that if we respond carefully, because we know what someone is about, that doesn't make you inauthentic or manipulative. Like I said, it makes you wise. Know yourself. And being empathic doesn't mean being a sucker or being a doormat or being the sole support of a one-sided relationship. But when you have your nature wanting to come out and you feel like you have to pull it back, it can feel like you're pulling back on wild horses. Like being constantly pulled back from wanting to save and rescue, empathize, fix, forgive, and make it all better. But instead, turn all of that back on yourself for a little while. Try the empathy for you and see how that feels. Hope that helps, and thanks again.